So it seems that a huge amount of details from the Emperor's Children Codex have got out and about, so let's round up a whole bunch of leaks. It seems the Lord Kakophonist can lead Terminator squads, Flawless Blades hit incredibly hard in melee, and we've got detachments for transports, allied demons and close combat specialists. Let's do a big roundup of some of the coolest things out of the leaks. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're talking about some interesting details from Codex Emperor's Children, which in time-honoured fashion from Games Workshop appears to have leaked to the internet before it was really supposed to. It's certainly a pretty big week for Warhammer 40k. The Emperor's Children launch box comes out this weekend, the Champions of Slaanesh one which contains the new Codex, and I feel like it often tends to happen when these box sets get shipped around the world. They might more commonly tend to be the codexes that seem to have a lot of their details shared early. The pricing on this one is £145, $230 or €180, with the pre-order dates being March the 1st. As ever, if you were looking to pick it up, I've got lots of discount retailers linked down in the video description. All of those help to support the channel if you do happen to be ordering in any Warhammer 40k things, the big box or otherwise. A big thank you to anyone using those. Here are the release times for the big box set: midnight in the USA and Canada, and then sort of between morning to midday for the UK, Europe and Australia. It's probably worth being early if you are looking to pick one up, given that these box sets have often tended to sell out really quite fast for things like the Blood Angels one and the Death Corps. While we're on the subject, I do also have the channel giveaway for the Champions of Slaanesh box set. This one will be for 8 channel viewers to get their hands on a copy of it. I'll talk through how to enter for that if you're interested at the end of the video. Jumping into the main stuff though, let's talk about the Emperor's Children leaks. It seems that over the past 12 hours or so, the majority of the codex has leaked. It doesn't look like the entirety of the book is out yet, but a whole bunch of the datasheets and unit profiles have been shared around the internet, really quite widely distributed by this point. As mentioned, it does feel like these tend to happen a bit more when Games Workshop releases codexes via big boxes like this, though to be honest there's a good chance that any given codex might have its details leaked early. Certainly interesting to find out a few answers to some burning questions though. I thought I'd run through a few of the highlights for some new rules for the units and the 4 detachments that Games Workshop didn't talk about. To quickly round up the core stuff that we know already, the army rule is Thrill Seekers, and that allows you to advance shoot and charge and fall back shoot and charge, though with a few restrictions like not attacking the unit that you just fell back from, and in general it's going to mean that Emperor's Children units move really quite quickly around the table. The Codex has 6 detachments: the Coterie of the Conceited, one for a prideful warlord paying a kill tally to Slaanesh. Slaanesh is chosen for characters trying to outdo each other to earn their deity's favour. The Mercurial Host, which is kind of speed focused. Rapid Evisceration, which is transport themed. Peerless Bladesmen, which is a dedicated close combat detachment. And Carnival of Excess is the allied demons force. It looks like the only datasheets that are locked out to a single detachment are the demons, which are only used in their own detachment as per the keywords in this book as far as we know it, and it seems like there's a good chance that'll be the only way that you can fill Slaanesh demons in Emperor's Children if Genius of the Occult Brood Brothers are anything to go by. Getting into rules though, let's start out with one of the detachments in the Mercurial Host. As previewed on Warhammer Community, their core rule is Quicksilver Grace, maybe a little bit on the underwhelming side at reroll advance rolls for Emperor's Children units. It's definitely not nothing given that you can advance shoot and charge, and it does make them a lot more reliable to do that, but it feels like more insurance against rolling ones and needing to command reroll and things, and maybe doesn't feel quite as powerful as some of the other detachment rules in my opinion. Some of the stratagems are really nice though. Perhaps the single best one might be the reactive move of 6 inches when an enemy unit moves within 9 inches. That could be used to hide units and run away from charges and things. Big scary units like Fulgrim and Flawless Blades would enjoy that. There's a return to reserve for units near board edges, which could be handy for scoring things, and auto advance 6 inches, which means that you could key in some very easy long charges, and a nice melee damage one with sustained hits 1 happening in the fight phase. I feel like the stratagems are maybe the more exciting bits compared with the detachment rule or the enhancements. There are enhancements for redeploying 2 units, a +1 to hit against damaged units, and a +1 to wound below half strength, and a -1 to wound for your own unit if the enemy's strength is greater than toughness attacks. I guess maybe that could be alright for the Terminators. Being able to move extra fast to get your damage in range doesn't seem the worst benefit in the world though. The reactive move and then the 6-inch advance and charge seem like rather nice advantages, and sustained hits 1 is a good boost to raw damage. Next up, let's look at one of the datasheets in the Lord Kakophonist. This guy's the leader with the great big doom siren on his back, and given he's fairly similar in appearance to a standard Chaos Space Marine Lord, he's got a surprisingly chunky stat line really. He's got toughness 5, a 2+ save with a 4+ invulnerable and 6 wounds. I would have guessed that he might have had a bit more of a support character stat line, but it seems not. The toughness 5 is likely because he's supposed to be a Noise Marine equivalent, and they're tougher because they're sort of seen as the Havoc equivalents. I'm kind of surprised that he gets a 2+ save and 6 wounds though. I was fairly sure he was only going to lead Noise Marines, but surprisingly enough he can also lead Terminators as well. Though if he does so, they won't be able to deep strike as he doesn't have that. I guess it's nice enough that a different character is able to lead the Terminators, as they don't have any Terminator armoured characters in the Codex to be able to do so. It does feel a bit weird though, given that just about every other Codex out there says only Terminators leading Terminator armoured units. For keywords, he's got expected ones, though he's got grenades, which could be relevant for the Terminators, I guess. And then for his war gear, he either gets 2 Screamer pistols or a Screamer pistol and power sword. The Screamer pistols each get 3 attacks, hitting on a 2+ at strength 5, AP 1 and damage 2 with ignores cover. That's all at 12 inches, and that's a fairly brutal profile for up-close shooting really. Though if he prefers, he can swap one of them for a 6 attack power sword at strength 5, AP -2 and damage 1. For his special rules, he gets 2 of them. His first is Obsessive Enunciation. That one gives you sustained hits 1 for ranged weapons in the model's unit, so makes Noise Marines really quite a lot shootier. And then his Doom Siren, which rather than being a weapon profile, is a chance to inflict a few mortal wounds on infantry. If his unit hits an infantry squad, then you roll 3d6. For each 4+ they take a mortal wound. So a little bit of extra damage there. If they do take any mortal wounds, they must also take a battle shock test. Overall, it looks like he adds a good bit of shooting with his own pistols and amps up the Noise Marines' big frequencies. He maybe doesn't seem quite as necessary for Terminators, though I suppose he could be used to get enhancements in the unit. Next up, let's take a look at the melee detachment in the Peerless Bladesmen. This one is the one that was focused on proudly dueling enemies and dispatching foes, their core rule being exquisite swordsmanship. This one's kind of similar to the Chaos Space Marine Dark Pact in its own way. Melee attacks either get lethal hits or sustained hits for units that charge this turn. Given that the Emperor's Children broadly get good movement characteristics and can advance and charge, they'll often be doing the charging rather than the other way around, which seems good. And then it's just the usual business of pick the one that's most effective. Usually if you're wounding on a 3 or better, then sustained hits is better, or if you're wounding on a 5+ or worse, then the lethal hits is better. For a few of their stratagems, they have a fun one called Cut Down the Weak. After an enemy unit falls back, if it's within 6-inch range of an Emperor's Children unit, then you can charge it as if it were your charge phase. It looks like you can also declare on other targets as well if you want to, so could be a big move there if the opponent moves too close to other stuff. Though similar to Heroic Intervention, you don't get your Fight's First charge bonus that you'd get if you charged in your normal turn. That could be kind of massive if the opponent doesn't have enough space to get away. Say they only have a 6-inch move and you're slightly encircling them, that means that you'd be able to guarantee charge them all over again. And it seems like it could easily be worth the 2 command points if that just leads to a dead enemy unit. I guess in reality it might not come up quite as much though. They do have some more reliable melee value ones for extra AP when they're on the charge, as it'd have a unit hit very hard along with the detachment buffs. There's a -1 to hit in the fight phase, and a 2 command point 1 to fights on death. That could be really big for the Flawless Blades if the opponent did have to try and take them out in melee. Finally, for a couple of enhancements for the Peerless Bladesmen, they have a relic sword called Distortion. This one gives you +1 attack and +1 damage to the bearer's melee weapons. That's a really big damage buff, and given that the Lord Exultant will have a Power Fist equivalent, you could get a lot of very scary damage 3 attacks on the go there. You could use it on Demon Princes potentially, or even use it on the Lord Kakophonist's Power Sword, and that'll give you 7 attacks at strength 5 and damage 2, which makes him surprisingly punchy for a broadly shooty character. There's another interesting one called Rise to the Challenge, with an infantry model being able to fight again at the end of the fight phase, but only if he's within engagement range of 3 enemy models, so in reality it's not going to be all that reliable to be able to trigger. Definitely harks back to the days of, say, Blood Angel Smash Captains fighting twice back in 8th edition though. Seems like it could be a fairly interesting detachment. Melee damage between the Flawless Blades, Lucius the Eternal and Fulgrim seem like some of the biggest damage threats out there, and this detachment goes all in on them. Next up, here's the new profile for the Noise Marines. As Games Workshop said in their previews, they've had a little bit of a role change in this book, and they're essentially the Havoc equivalents now. So they do get the curious boosted toughness profile that the Havocs get, I guess being slightly up-armoured heavies. As seemed likely, you can now field just units of 6 of them, no more, no less. That's going to be the Orvay Slanesh holy amount that they're sold in, and in that unit they get 1 Disharmonious squad leader. For their weapons, given that they're a bit more heavy weapon troopers now, their shooting did get fairly significantly better. The Sonic Blaster is 18-inch range but basically fires like a heavy bolter, strength 5 AP -1 and damage 2 with ignores cover. Though the real standouts of the unit are the Blastmasters, which as per the leaks do appear to have been reduced in range to 18 inches, with either 3 attacks at strength 10 AP2, damage 3 and ignores cover, or 6 attacks at strength 6 AP2 and damage 1. You can get 2 per unit, and they feel like they're going to be doing quite a bit of heavy lifting. They'll really mess up enemy elite infantry like Terminator equivalents. They should be solid enough against vehicles though, unless they're toughness 11 or more. Finally, the Disharmonists can either take a Sonic Blaster or take a combination of Screamer Pistol and Power Sword. Screamer Pistols do basically just seem to be Sonic Blasters but with lower range and the pistol keyword. And I guess for that reason, if you do think you'd be able to get them in close, it seems like a pretty reasonable option to upgrade to the Power Sword to have a tiny bit more melee threat if you wanted. Perhaps the biggest downside for the squad is their special rule, which is Terrifying Crescendo. One unit hit by the squad is -1 to leadership and battle shock tests until the start of your next shooting phase, which is a little bit situational, and you don't even know that the squad that's got hit by that will even have to test at any point. I believe due to the sequencing, you could use that rule before triggering the Lord Kakophonist battle shock test if you had one, as both of those say after the unit has shot, so I believe the controlling player decides. Either way, battle shock doesn't really feel like it's going to be the main focus of these guys, but it does look like they've got some fairly scary firepower against things like standard Space Marine equivalents or 3-wound infantry with those Blastmasters. Hopefully they're priced at a point where they're a scary elite choice for the unit that can deal a bunch of damage and feel all very good. One way that the Noise Marines could be getting to the fight is the Rapid Evisceration Detachment. This one's the transport focused one, and their core rule is appropriately titled Mechanized Murder. You get to reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1 for units that got out of transports this turn. In absence of any other buffs or any other special rules, that's around a 36% damage increase, which is definitely quite significant. Feels like that could be just what the Noise Marines want, to be hitting the enemy unusually hard after they're delivered into threat range. The stratagems, as you'd expect, have a good number of transport shenanigans. There's a 1/4 Slayer unit in melee and then re-embark in a transport, which could be quite a big move, but you'd have to be really quite close up the board with the transport, and I do wonder whether you'd be able to get in range of that very reliably. There's a sort of assault ramp rule for a Rhino that made a normal move. I strongly suspect that they won't be able to transport flawless blades, so I guess perhaps that could be one for the Infractors and an attached character maybe. There's the option to return things to Strategic Reserve, either one Land Raider or 2 other dedicated transports, so Rhinos I guess, and that could be an option to use those for utility purposes later in the game or deliver something turn 2. Finally, there's enhancements for 1 for preventing overwatch in a turn when you've got out of a transport, and there's 1 to buff vehicles in general nearby, with 1 attack per turn becoming damage 0 for a vehicle within 6 inches. This one feels like a bit of a weird one perhaps. I think that the core rule is quite a nice one with that big damage buff. A fair bit of the rest maybe feels either a little bit situational, or maybe not quite as helpful as you'd want it to be with the units that you can use. Given access to advance and charge and an 8-inch move, I just wouldn't be too surprised if the flawless blades generally want to be foot-slogging it across the board as opposed to taking a Land Raider. And unless we get surprises with the troops units, it just feels like they're probably not going to be the damage dealers that generally want to justify transports. Noise Marines do feel like they could be one of the better uses of the detachment though. Next up, and it seems that some of the powerhouse melee of the Codex are the flawless blades. These basically seem to be the Emperor's Children possessed equivalent, technically not possessed though, and more just sort of mutated and given boons by their deity, apparently too prideful to share their perfect forms with demons. For their stat line, they move pretty fast at 8 inches, have toughness 5 with a 3+ save and a 5+ invulnerable and 3 wounds. So fairly chunky-ish elite infantry, at least somewhat equivalent to Chaos Possessed or 8-bound, that may be a little bit easier to kill. You can take them in units of 3 or 6, given that they come in a set of 3, and they do get the grenades keyword. For their war gear, they get a bolt pistol and then bliss blades. Bliss blades have got a fairly threatening profile with 3 attacks hitting on a 2+ at strength 6, AP 3 and damage 2, so nice big AP there. They're going to have a good time against things like Space Marines or high armor saves. That's already a profile that's going to be pretty nasty against most enemy infantry out there, but their special rule is a rather fun one. They get to critical wound on a 3+ if they choose to call upon the patron deities, which means they'd be wounding literally anything on the game on a 3+, so it'd be one that you'd usually want to use against really big tough monsters and vehicles. There is a downside to this one though, as if they choose to use that rule and they don't kill anything, then Slaanesh gets displeased and one amongst their number is destroyed. That does feel like it could be a big high risk, high reward style play. particularly given the things that are going to be best for that rule are going to be tough monsters and vehicles, where you could be at the whims of the dice whether or not the unit actually dies, so you could go big but then wind up just falling short. They seem fairly spectacularly general purpose though. If you've got units of 6 of them, then they'll be a massive threat to just about anything in Warhammer 40k, particularly with some of the detachments that can make them faster or hit harder. Presume their points cost isn't astronomical. They feel like they're going to be a bit of a centrepiece unit in the army. Finally, for the detachments beyond the ones that Games Workshop previewed, we've got the Carnival of Excess. This one's the sort of allied demon detachment, and it does appear that it's the only one that can fill the demon datasheets that are in the book. They've got the keyword Legion of Excess instead of the Emperor's Children keyword, kind of similar to how the Harlequins are treated in the Eldari book. And this detachment appears to be the one that allows you to field up to half your army in those units. That means that you could take up to 1,000 points of them at Strike Force, or save up to 500 points in Incursion. The ones that you're allowed to take are Shalaxi Hellbane, the Keeper of Secrets, the Seekers, the Fiends and the Demonettes, and that was missing a few notable demons such as the Chariots, the Soul Grinder, the Heralds on Foot and the named characters. Either way, the Demons units and the Slanesh units both get a damage increase. If their units are within 6 inches of each other, then they empower the other sets. When the units are empowered, they get sustained hits 1 on all their attacks, whether they're ranged or melee. On top of that, if the units already had sustained hits for some reason, then they get to critical hit on a 5+ if they already had that and are still empowered. It seems like an okay damage boost, though with units moving really fast and charging things all over the place, it seems likely that some units are going to be out of range of that a fair bit of the time. Most of the stratagems have a bit of synergy between the demons and the Chaos Marines of one sort or another. For a couple of the more fun ones, there was a 1 command point for healing 3 wounds or D3+3 demonettes to a unit, and that triggers if an Emperor's Children unit can slay an enemy unit in the fight phase within 6 inches. I feel like the setup of that is maybe a bit painful, though it does have quite a good reward if it happens naturally. You could make a Keeper of Secrets suddenly regain a fair bit of health. Otherwise, there's an interesting one for Demonettes to return to Strategic Reserve. They can do so if they're not within engagement range, and then the next turn they come back via Deep Strike, and can do so anywhere that's greater than 6 inches from the enemy, and seemingly still charge as well. Could make them into an interesting enough utility unit to jump into the enemy backfield and clean out a bunch of home objective grabbers, though it is a fairly expensive stratagem. I guess this one would give you significantly better datasheet access. At first impressions, I'd be kind of surprised if Carnival of Excess was seen as the best way to play Emperor's Children though, to be honest. And it could be a bit of a downside if it does wind up being the only way that you can fill Slanesh demon allies, as opposed to just being able to put them in any army up to a quarter of the points cost as before. The demons datasheet certainly won't be hitting anywhere near as hard as they can potentially do in the Legion of Excess from the Demons Index. Finally, last but not least, we have Fulgrim himself. I talked through his datasheet in a little bit more detail in the last video, though in general he is pretty imposing. He has standard Demon Primarch stats, with 16 wounds at toughness 11 with a 2+ save. He moves a very scary 16 inches considering he can advance and charge, so that could often be a 27-inch threat range on average. For his weapons, he gets 6 attacks at strength 8, AP 2 and damage 2 with his Malefic Lash, and then in close combat he either gets 6 big attacks with strength 14 and damage d6 plus 1, or 12 attacks at strength 8, damage 2, plus a bunch of bonus attacks from his tail at strength 6 and damage 1. That's a fairly scary and general purpose profile, fairly good against big stuff and nice against lighter infantry, maybe having a bit of a weak spot for things like Terminators, which could bounce the big attacks at least fairly reliably off an invulnerable save. For his special rules, he gets some demonic poisons. If he hits something but doesn't kill it, then for the rest of the game you roll a 4+ in each command phase, and if you do so, then they take D3 mortal wounds. That's pretty powerful in terms of the overall damage output if you do that early in the game. And then he's got the choice of his 3 different Demon Primarch buffs. This one being kind of reactive to the opponent though, and trying to mess with their plans. You choose them in the opponent's command phase, and he either gets a -1 to hit, fights first, which is very scary for melee armies, or a chance to stop enemies from falling back within 6 inches if they fail a leadership test. Overall, once again, if he's pointed right, then he's going to be an absolute powerhouse for the Emperor's Children. Really fast moving, generally scary melee, and in particular the fights first could be incredibly big. Seems like a pretty appropriate fight for the Demon Primarch of the Emperor's Children. In any case, lots of exciting stuff for Slanesh's Chaos Space Marine Legion. Let me know your thoughts as to all the leaks and reveals down in the comments below. I'll certainly be looking forward to making a full Codex review once we get a few more details, and I might stop in to check in on Lucius the Eternal for the next one. So far it looks like there's enough to be interesting. I feel like the core rule is really big. Faultless Blades look like they could be some of the big stuff killers of the Codex, and Noise Marines could certainly be powerhouses if they've got the right points cost. I'd say that most of the detachments maybe don't add quite as much standout stuff as some other armies out there. They're definitely not weak, but I feel like it might be one of the codexes that has a bit more of a slant towards the power being in the datasheets rather than the crafty tricks and stratagems that they can do. I'll be interested to hear your guys' takes though. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Finally, I'll just quickly cycle back to the box set giveaway as mentioned earlier. And as mentioned, the Auspex Tactics channel giveaway for March will be the chance for 8 winners to get their hands on an Emperor's Children launch box set. The one with the Lord Exultants, 12 Noise Marines, 20 Tormentors or Infractors, plus the new Codex. As ever for the channel giveaways, there's 2 equal ways to enter. They'll be linked down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount. That's the main thing that keeps the videos coming, and that gets you automatic entry each and every month into these. Or you can equally enter completely for free via supporting on social media. To do that, you do these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the Facebook page, and then to actually enter the draw, a Facebook post appears on the 1st of March. Reply to that with a picture of any 40k mini or imagery, along with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo, the last bit just to stop the Facebook bots and spammers from making off with the prizes. Then after 24 hours from that post going live, that gets locked and I do the draw, putting all the entries into a random number generator, picking out the 8 winners, and they'll be announced on the 4th of March. The box sets will be posted out when I receive my orders of them, which will be around about the 15th. In any case, feel free to check out the links in the video description to the Patreon page or the Facebook page. I do tend to do similar giveaways with the exact same rules each and every month. I'll leave that one there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly have a few more videos coming for the Emperor's Children. As mentioned, feel free to check out the Patreon page if you'd like to help support, as well as the giveaway entries. There's a few other things like seeing occasional videos early, votes to see what sort of things come next, and names in the credits and things like that. In any case though, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.